2 years ago, we decided to sell all of our blogs. Then we got really busy with a lot of things, but eventually we finally decided to get started with a batch of new websites. One of those new websites was cookforfolks.com. We did almost everything the same as we always had, and the site grew, but its growth was rocky. There's one specific thing that has been the primary driver holding this website back from the very beginning, and no matter what else we try to do to it, this one thing is preventing it from having the kind of success that we should be having with our blog. Let me start by showing you exactly what we did, and let's see if you can spot where things changed. We started with sites originally like pontoonguide.com. This was a website about pontoon boats. The website only had about 30 articles or so on it in total, and yet that website did extremely well. Later, we started sites that grew much bigger. We started with this little site called snakeowner.com that was just about pet snakes. And after like 100 articles just about snakes, we decided to expand and to cover other pets. And we turned that website into a pets website called Embora Pets. We also started around the same time a website called outdoortroop.com, where we covered a ton of outdoor topics. But once again, we started with things like cabins by taking content from cabinfreedom.com, which I had already been working on, moving that on. We took rappelling content from another website and moved it on. And then we went category by category to cover things like kayaking, cover things like all sorts of camping topics. And we went topic by topic by topic until we had covered a ton about outdoors. Then it was time to start another website, and we were ready to throw a lot of content at it, and we decided to pick cooking. Just cooking. Can you see what changed? I didn't totally spell it out. It's not the fact that cooking is tremendously broad, because outdoors is also tremendously broad. It's a huge niche. The problem is that we started too broad. You see, the real problem is that we had a lot of content, but no depth to the content, which leads to no real authority. Now, this may seem simple, but it's a little bit more complicated than you think. So let me show you what I mean and exactly how to make sure that you have depth of content on your website. See, it's not just about writing more thorough articles that are deep in content within a specific search query or a specific topic. It's also not just about grouping your articles into nice categories so Google can see how they fit together. Let me show you what we've done on Cook for Folks and what most people are doing on their blogs. Right now, here's how we've divided up content. We have a bunch of articles that cover various aspects of food safety, catering, food quantities, some recipes, and then just a bunch of random tips and FAQs. If you don't know what you're looking for, it can look like these are good categories. Bunch of content about food safety, right? So that means we have some authority on food safety if we have a lot of articles covering that. Wouldn't that make a lot of sense? You would think so. But here's the problem. There are a lot of different kinds of food, and there are a lot of different safety issues related to food. And so I could have 50 articles or even 100 articles that are all about food safety without developing very much topical authority on any one group of content within food safety. A really good way to go about figuring out if your category is just way too broad and maybe your articles are just not close enough related is to look at multiple ways to slice the content on your website. Let me show you what I mean by that. Right now I've sliced it by these different categories. However, what if I sliced it another way? What if now I sliced it by food type? For example, what if I did meat? What if I did pasta, fruits and vegetables, and maybe even poultry gets its own, and maybe also baked goods? You can see how some of the issues regarding food safety would be different for these different types of foods. Also, some of these quantity questions might be different for these different types of foods. A lot of the tips and, well, clearly recipes, but various tips and other FAQs would be different for the different types of foods. So if I have 50 food safety articles, but I really only have like 2 on poultry, and I have maybe 10 on meat, but I have only 3 more on fruits and veggies, and a couple on pasta, and then obviously the many other types of foods that there are out there, am I really an expert on food safety in any one thing? Because again, the issues regarding food safety are so different depending on the type of food. But also the needs of the user are dramatically different depending on the different types of food. When we go to interlink our articles, interlinking two food safety articles that are totally different types of food or foods that don't pair really well together, that link doesn't really do any good because there's very little reason for a user who's reading an article about food safety for smoked pulled pork to read an article for food safety for apple pie, unless they just happen to be making both at the same time and have leftovers. So this is the issue. While we have literally a couple hundred articles on the website, we don't have enough depth on closely related small pockets of content. We often like to call those pockets of content clusters. Those clusters of content that are very closely related and all sort of written around a specific issue or a specific need for the user. So the easiest way that I find to go about this is to actually take the niche that I've selected and try to slice it in multiple different ways. I have the different food types. I have these other categories that we've come up with, but are there more? The focus of cookforfolks.com is cooking for groups of people. Well, when we cook for groups of people, oftentimes that is done around some sort of an event. And so what if I looked at slicing it based on the type of event? What if we looked at weddings, holidays, and what about maybe other types of celebrations like graduations and those types of things? There are other event types as well that we could include in slicing it that way. For a person who is preparing food for a wedding, they are probably going to be reading some articles about potentially pasta and potentially some of the other types of food. And it makes sense that we would group articles together based around weddings, even if they're not around the same type of food. It gives us a different way to look at the content. So if I were starting from the very beginning with Cook for Folks today, I would look at all these different ways to slice the information, and I would want to keep all of these in mind, but I would probably, as my sort of first way of breaking it up, I would probably break it up by the type of event, because that's probably the most likely scenario for a user coming to our website to be looking for answers to these types of questions that we're answering with our content. But then what would I do? I would say, well, for somebody who is planning a wedding, what are the different things that they need to know? They need to know about food quantities. What are the types of foods commonly eaten at weddings? Maybe we'll pull some of those in. And what we can do is we can come up with a cluster of content, maybe 10 or 15 articles around weddings that would be extremely helpful. So how do you know which way of slicing is going to make the most sense for your niche? Here's the way that I like to think about it that helps me the most. If I'm a user, somebody using the internet that's doing these searches, that's asking the questions, the search queries that you're writing articles for, what is it that I'm trying to do? So back to Cook for Folks for just a second. If I'm on Cook for Folks, I'm probably asking these questions because I'm planning a meal for a group of people. That's the kind of content we're writing about. And so, if I'm planning a meal, it's around one of these types of events. It could just be for a backyard barbecue, but that is an event type. And so it makes sense for me to split it by event type. If I am researching pontoon boats and reading an article on pontoonguide.com, it's probably because I either want to buy a pontoon boat or I bought one and I want to know the best ways to use it, accessories, places to go, etc. So what we want to do is we want to take what it is that the user is trying to accomplish. What's their overall goal? And then let's create almost like a step-by-step guide, providing them all of the individual pieces of content to answer the questions that they're going to have as they go through this particular journey. So why didn't we approach Cook for Folks this way? Well, we had a hypothesis. The hypothesis was, if there is low competition around a search query and I write the best piece of content, I will rank for it, essentially ignoring the importance of topical authority. And what we found is that that's absolutely not true. Ignoring topical authority could be something that dramatically prevents your website from ever having an opportunity for success. You could write the best individual piece of content on the entire internet covering a specific search query and never land anywhere near page 1. This is what we've discovered as we tested out this hypothesis with Cook for Folks. Don't ignore topical authority. Break out your content into clusters of content that make a lot of sense. So now you may be wondering, are we sure this is the thing that held back Cook for Folks? I can tell you with complete confidence that this is the issue. This is something that we tried out not only on Cook for Folks, but actually on several websites we started around the same time. Cook for Folks is the one that's grown the most because it's the one that we've given the most attention and put the most other effort into. But it's also one that we still haven't fixed this issue on entirely. And that's why it continues to struggle every time there's an algorithm update. But every one of those other sites that we just put content on and left, just like we'd done before with Camper Report and with Pontoon Guide, where those sites succeeded really well. With every single website where we took this approach, they have been basically dead in the water from the very beginning. It can be really hard if you, like us, have a ton of content on a website and now you need to go back and you need to make a change like this. But what we're gonna do is take this approach as if from the very beginning. We're gonna slice every direction that we can think of, and we're gonna group content in this sort of a way, and you're gonna find that there's a ton of content you can add within various of these clusters, and you may also find that there's some content you currently have on your website that maybe just needs to not be there anymore. So there we go. I guess Nathan and I better go get to work.
Hey, Becky. Hey, now that you got Cook for Folks done, do you wanna help me out with the rest of the portfolio?
Whew, there's a bunch of sites. Hey, Nathan, these are empty folders. Where's the papers?
Oh, websites. There's no papers.
Yeah, I guess.